In 3, 2, 1.
Hello, everyone. I'm Paul Greenberg, and welcome to Talking Headless. I hope your week's amazing. I hope you feel amazing. And I hope I have something amazing I can maybe even speak to you about. I'm going to do this quick. Before we get into the segments, the show's been running like 60 to 70 minutes, which is literally 30 to 40 minutes longer than I want it to run. So what I'm going to try to do is keep each segment to 10 minutes, which will probably bring the show down to about 35, 36 minutes because of the intro and the outro and this little intro right here, et cetera, et cetera. I want to, in advance, apologize to Adobe, who will be the Why I Won the Watchlist segment and our first just straight winner, because their segment's going to be 10 minutes, where the other segments for the winners of distinction have been something in the order of 20 to 25. So I just want to let you know, I want to get feedback from you, whether you like the shorter program, the longer program, whether you like them both, whatever. And with that said, let's get into the next segment. This, of course, is What's Going On, where basically I speak to random things that are on my mind at any given time, which may or may not be interesting to you one way or the other, but it was at least interesting to me. Hopefully, I'll make them interesting to you. So look, again, I'm trying to keep this under 10 minutes. So here's what we got today. We've got Twitter, we've got Capital One, we've got hearing aids, and we got the Edelman Trust Barometer. First, let me make it clear on Twitter, because for the last week and a half, I have been asked by a ton of people, what do I think of what's happening with Twitter and Elon Musk going to the office? And I would say this. 1, Elon Musk is a megalomaniac. 2, that toilet he brought into the office on day 1 is basically, to be perfectly blunt, the toilet that he's flushing Twitter down. 3, he's making insane decisions without any thought other than to prove how powerful he is. 4, he gave back Trump his account. Now, you can make the argument there, free speech, et cetera, et cetera. I despise Trump, so I am not a, let's call it, unbiased observer in any way, shape, or form. So I am appalled that he gave it back. But generally, from the standpoint of his attempt to monetize Twitter in a way that will realize some of the investment he apparently didn't want to make in the acquisition of the company, he's forgetting that there are customers there and that they aren't just objects of a sale. They are people who are participating in the communications using Twitter as their communications medium. And as a result of that, also, expectations have been set through prior generations of Twitter owners, and those customers are looking for those expectations to be met. Musk is just saying, no, I'm a bully, I'm going in, I will take everything out, I'll do it my way, I'll monetize the way I want, I don't care, it's my business, blah, blah, blah. He has no filter, no social sense whatsoever. He's a terrible person, even though he's a very intelligent person. So there you have it. That's what I think of what's going on Twitter. I just hope, because it is an important communications medium, that it does survive, number 1. And number 2, on the, okay, what about the alternatives? The one everyone's talking about and a number of my friends have signed up for is Mastodon. And Mastodon, I'm sure, could be a viable alternative, but the process of registering on Mastodon is ridiculous. You have to pick a server. It could be a specific server that has a subject matter that's specific to what you want. It could be a general server. You could create your own server. And all of that creates an enormous amount of problems for signing up and participating in a communication service. It should be simple, it should be unified and single, and at the same time, given that it's open source and you're creating your own communications servers, you might fall afoul of some sort of federal or state regulation when it comes to communications, and I would be very careful of that. Not you, the customer of Mastodon, the company, watch for that. I don't know. Maybe you have great lawyers. I have no idea. I am wary of Mastodon because of the kludginess of registration. All right. Capital One. I am a customer of Capital One. I watch commercials of Capital One Bank on TV where they talk about the Capital One Cafe, where you can come in and it's very experiential and you can have a cup of wonderful coffee and maybe even some pastries. I don't know. And everything is comfortable, and you have comfortable couches, and it just looks great. Except Capital One in my area, Manassas, Virginia, had 2 branches. They shut both of them down. The closest branch is about 9 miles away. It's in Woodbridge, and it's basically a trek, given the traffic you hit, given the time of day you go, etc. There could be as much as round trip of an hour and a half to 2 hours. They made it very inconvenient. Secondly, I have to make domestic and international wire transfers. They give no guidance on that anywhere. So one day I go into the bank and they say, I go in at, I am not kidding, 3:01, and they said, oh, I'm sorry, no international wire transfers after 3 p.m. And they wouldn't even waver for a minute. They can't even enter it into the system so it can be set up tomorrow. Domestic wire transfers. I went on a Saturday. We don't do domestic wire transfers on a Saturday. So they give me a phone number. I call. It takes me an hour to do the first domestic wire transfer. A couple of days ago, I attempted to do a second domestic wire transfer. And they say, what's the last 4 digits of your social? I give them my social security last 4 digits, say that's not working. I've had this social security number for my whole life, 1. 2, I've been a bank customer for 20 years, never had a problem with it. And even the last time when there seemed to be a problem, I still managed to get the domestic wire transfer done. This time, sorry, can't progress, can't do it over the phone. You can only go into the branch. All right, so what's the lesson here? Oh, and the other thing was when I was actually being security verified this time, last time, the first time I did it, they didn't ask for my driver's license upload. This time they wanted me to upload a driver's license or a passport picture. I had to do that. All right, so what are the problems here? 1, Capital Bank has no sense of the customer. Then it's not bank regulatory, it's Capital One procedures. I deal with other banks and they're much easier to deal with. So they have no sense of a customer. They are a horrible bank when it comes to customers. And they need to actually spend the time to identify what are the pain points in the customer experience, and I can identify several for them just via my experience, both at the branch or on the phone or whatever, and especially when it comes to wire transfers. 2, the other thing they don't do, they're not systematic in their approach. For example, the criteria it took to go to domestic wire transfer 2 to get to through the various layers was entirely different than the criteria they used through doing a domestic wire transfer 1, and very different from international wire transfer when all you really need there is more information. Problematic. All right. So what does that mean? Be systemic and systematic in your approach so that the customers aren't thrown for a loop every single time they participate in something that has an identifiable process. 2, think more about your customers, don't shut down branches. That's convenience, right? Cafes, that's delight. Focus on convenience, not on delight. Delight is occasional. Convenience is necessary. They are the most inconvenient bank. As a result of that, I will be shutting down my account after 20 years with them, my business account, which has run millions of dollars through it, and I will be moving over to Chase, which is the company that bought one of the branches building. All right. 3, now we go on to hearing aids. Just let you know, I've been fitted for hearing aids. That's it. I'll have them next week. I'll let you know how they work. The coolest thing about these things is that they have Bluetooth. They operate half as much as earbuds as actual hearing aids. So basically, not only will I have a good pair of earbuds, but I'll have great, much better, at least improved hearing. And a shout out to Brian Kramer for pointing out his hearing aids on LinkedIn, which got me sparked to do that. All right, finally, we'll go to the Edelman Trust Barometer. Now, that one, I think it'll make me run over my 10 minutes, but that one is very interesting. This is Edelman Trust Barometer 2022. We'll have a link in the show notes to this on how to get it. What's fascinating is you can see the impact now that the transition to millennial leadership and business participation has had. So what they found all across the globe in this year's Edelman Trust Barometer is that when it comes to beliefs and values, 64% of the participants, the stakeholders, not just the shareholders, the stakeholders in a business will invest in that business. And invest means literally invest, meaning put money into, but it also means invest time and effort based on the beliefs and values of the business. 60% of the respondents said that they would choose a place to work based on their beliefs and values. 58% said they would buy or advocate for the brand based on beliefs and values. I want you to think about that for a minute. So the bulk of people who are participating one way or the other or in business, beliefs and values matter. Social responsibility matters. These are mission critical, important things. That means that when you are a company, think through not just your value prop, which it tends to be a marketing thing, and that is the 10 minutes, by the way. So you now know that I'm running over 10. So let's continue. So beliefs and values matter when it comes to business, right? And your investment as a consumer, as an investor, as an employee, whatever. Now, interestingly enough, the most trusted segment in the world, now this is based on 4 segments that they were looking at, which was business, NGOs, government, and media, was not shockingly, number 2 was shocking, not unshockingly, NGOs, meaning non-governmental organizations, meaning nonprofit. Shockingly, the second most trusted institution was business. Third was media, and fourth was government. And the reasoning is pretty clear. The ones seen as most ethical were NGOs, the nonprofits who were there to do social good. And they were seen as number 1 in their overall score. They were seen as a highly effective agent of positive change. Interestingly enough, though, the net score that they got for that, this is the NGOs, was 30. Business's net score as a highly effective agent of positive change was 29, where government was -7 and media was +9. Which is not very good. Now, the interesting thing, though, is where it starts differentiating, and we'll get into what this means in a second, is that when it came to fairness, the NGO's net score was 11, and that was number 1 by a long shot. And then the second was business, but they were -7, government -19, media -12. So meaning they still were seen as negative when it came to fairness. Highly effective agent of positive change, yes, but not serving the interests of everybody equally and fairly. Now, here's the interesting thing. Mark Benioff has, of course, said millions of times that business is a positive agent for social change. And he said this over and over. And you know what? The best way to define it is, yes, it can be. But that's dependent, again, on your willingness to invest as a business in doing social good. Now, I would suggest highly, given that the current Edelman Trust Barometer is out, and by the way, this has been the trusted source of who's your most trusted source for 22 years. I think the first one came out in 2000. And the reality is that you can trust the Trust Barometer to give you a look at how things really are across the globe. And they look at I believe, 27 countries, and then there's the top 7, which are the biggest ones, and so on. But ultimately, what we see is social responsibility governs what determines the level of trust in a business almost without comparison to anything in any way else, meaning well beyond anything else. Trust is governed by the beliefs and values of the business and how they correspond with the beliefs and values of the individual stakeholder. And that's a big lesson for businesses. PPN will have a show sometime in 2023, which will be on, it's yet to be named, yet to be hosted, and yet to be launched, or even have a launch date, but it'll be on solely on social responsibility and what's going on in the world of doing good. And that will provide you with more insights, because we will have playbooks in that course of how a business can become social and do the right thing throughout. So, with that in mind, let's look at the Edelman Trust Barometer. Let's understand that with those numbers, and with many more, which I don't have time to get into, we're looking at businesses are trusted as agents of change by the individual stakeholders who see their beliefs and values aligning with those businesses. But businesses are not trusted to be fair about how they treat everyone. That's a conundrum that has to be solved. You have to get to the positive fairness in order for that actual agent of change to work. Meaning, you can't be selective on how you treat people, but you can be focused on the social good you do. And with that, it took me 15 minutes and 46 seconds. Let's move on to segment 2. I will see you in a few.
What they used to tell me every day, caught a few along the way, don't be afraid if you gotta lose one. I'm trying to take it higher, the boy is on fire, you preaching to the choir, you know that. Never been a liar, the boy is on fire, I'll take it to the wire, you know that.
Taking it to the wire, at least at this stage, is devoted to the winners of the CRM Watchlist 2022. And we've been through the 4 winners with distinction so far. Now we start with in alphabetical order, with the first winner, straight out winner, and that's Adobe. Again, my apologies to Adobe. This isn't going to be any more than 10 minutes, but here we go. One of the things that's characterized Adobe over the years, and what actually made them a winner, has been a strategy that was designed by Adobe back in 2018, I believe, at least when they announced it to analysts and became public in 2019. Adobe at that time announced that they were revamping how they looked at what they provided. Obviously, they're very well known and probably best known for Creative Cloud. And that, of course, has created vast communities of users using tools like Illustrator, Premiere Pro, Photoshop, etc., and using Behance as a community for providing things. They bought Frame.io so that people can upload and download things from the cloud to each other as the projects are in progress. They've done an amazing amount of work with Creative Cloud. Has become one of the industry standards. I mean, to be fair, it's one of them, and Final Cut Pro for Mac users perhaps, and DaVinci Resolve for others who are in the Blackmagic ecosystem. But Creative Cloud is not all they provide. Obviously, they provided Creative Cloud. They provided Document Cloud, which is actually PDF files, among other things. And I remember when they announced it as, we are going to create an industry standard for documents. And along with Word and Docs and DocX, they are the industry standard for documents without any question. They've accomplished their goal. The third one, which is now the Experience Cloud, used to be called the Digital Marketing Cloud, was a little more of a, let's say, enterprise B2B kind of business application, where Creative Cloud tended to B2C and Document Cloud tended to both. Digital Marketing, now known as Experience Cloud, tended to a B2B kind of thing, and it was focused on creation of experiences. And when I say that, consumable experiences like what Disney does basically, and you pay a premium for, and also on marketing and campaigns and so on. 2018, they realized that because the world was transitioning and changing, that it was actually what they have embraced as the creator economy beginning to develop, and where creators of content were monetizing the content, and actually those creators were also then becoming part of much larger enterprises, and it was getting inculcated into business on the B2B side and the individual contributors around B2C, that they needed to change their thinking on how they did things. And they announced what they called the open ecosystem and platform. And what that meant on the foundational aspect of it was Document Cloud, Creative Cloud, and Experience Cloud would all become a single platform, still retaining the unique capabilities of each cloud, but would become a single platform using a single architecture, et cetera, et cetera. The second thing they talked about was what they called an open ecosystem, and this is where they were able to distinguish themselves from most other companies. In fact, all other companies, really. They said, look, we are going to take an end-to-end look at what our customers might need. And that obviously is several different types of customers and stakeholders too, not just paying customers. So they took a look at it and they said, okay, we provide this with those three clouds, with the platform we're developing, we will be able to provide that natively. We have partners who can provide this. We have big gaps that neither a partner or we provide. And the fourth pillar, which was different than anyone else, was even though we do this and we have partners who do this, if the partner does it, or the partner or a company does it better than we do, then we bring them into the ecosystem too and reposition what we provide. So, for example, the Adobe-Microsoft partnership. Adobe recognized very strongly that they needed to have what Microsoft provided when it came to the Dynamics capabilities on sales and even on marketing, even though they are a marketing-focused company, but B2B marketing and, of course, service. And what you have now is what I call GARP, the Get a Room partnership, right? And you remember the world according to GARP. That's the partnership world according to GARP. It should be that intimate a partnership. Architectures are open to each other. They co-sell. The works is there. Now, what Adobe's also done recently, much to the consternation of millennials apparently, is acquire Figma. Now, Figma technically competes with Adobe Express, but what Adobe recognizes, Figma does way better at it than Adobe Express. They won't say that, of course, they can't, but I can, and it does. Figma is an extraordinary platform to what I know of it so far. We're using it, our web developer for the PPN website uses it, and I'm getting some lessons in it coming up shortly. But I've done my research on it, and it's apparently much better. But that's the idea of an open ecosystem, we add the capabilities. But the other side of it is Adobe's also expanded their partnerships in a very unique way. So they have the Microsoft partnership, they have an SAP partnership, they have a ServiceNow partnership. They even have Adobe with ServiceNow as a perfect example. Adobe is looking at the service data as a way to enhance the experience data. ServiceNow, the marketing data as a way to enhance the service data, right? But they also have partnerships with FedEx and Walmart and PayPal, which is service partners. In other words, what they're doing is building out a unique ecosystem of partners, and that is the foundation for the power of Adobe. On the other hand, of course, they're starting to engage in much bigger areas and much deeper areas of the customer experience and customer engagement. And you can see that in how they even think about the company. What I highly recommend is you just look at the event, the Adobe Max conference, which is the Creative Clouds conference, and just see how they put it on. And you realize that it's an extremely well-produced, highly programmed, but at the same time, highly appealing to the senses production. And it's absolutely astonishing what they're able to do. But it goes further than that. Adobe has also been able to position themselves in the market, and from that standpoint, they built out the product set that they need. For example, they're starting to go into things like journey orchestration, which they've never had, and is actually, if you're going to become an engagement platform of any kind, you have to have journey orchestration. There are a lot of engagement platforms out there, or CX platforms, that don't have it, and they can't really make the claim. Of course, they can do what they want. So think about it from this standpoint. Adobe's power is in the platform and the ecosystem that they have been evolving since 2018 successfully. Now, what does Adobe have to do to continue to have the impact they've had thanks to the power of their platform? Well, there's a few things. They have a tendency, like many companies, to do competition bashing. They need to eliminate that. Look, all competition bashers are, number one, doing something I find revolting generally, but really what they're doing, if you think about it, are conceding the alpha position to whoever they're bashing. They're basically saying, you are higher on the mountaintop, so we are going to attack you. They're attacking the position number one holders. Stupid move, because they look bad. Number two, and this is really fascinating to me, given how powerful they are and how focused on experiential marketing they are, they need to market a little better. Now, when I say that, I don't mean that they need to do marketing in the traditional sense of campaigns, because marketing is pretty much starting to transition to less campaigns, more conversations, and more conversations in real time. Thus, the power of what's called the CDP these days, which is to me an active system of record, not so much more than that. But ultimately, the idea is respond to stakeholders, could be customers, could be others, in as close to real time as humanly possible, given the data that you've managed to capture, analyze, and use, right? So that's the power of it, is because of the need to respond in that kind of time, given the expectations of customers. Now, what Adobe doesn't do much of, which is surprising, is while they do a significant amount of content marketing and a decent amount of social marketing, they don't do much when it comes to things like building out programs and programs like we're doing with PPN, building out a network, building out a digital broadcasting network. That might sound like a ridiculous formulaic approach, but it really isn't. Ultimately, we know how people consume now, and video and audio via podcasts, etc., is more preeminent than white papers, which are long and often not very well written. White papers and other digital print or actual print formats. Not saying they're eliminated, they're still very important, but we have to start adding in the idea of broadcasting. Salesforce Plus, HubSpot Creator Hub, right? The way Oracle has put on their productions with Oracle TV, which is not a full-blown network, but Oracle TV is a full-blown TV channel, right? Start thinking in those terms a lot more than Adobe does. The irony of Adobe is that they are among the most visually beautiful companies in the world. They are incredibly good at driving events that have that kind of sensate satisfaction that really do borderline on delight of a customer. Well, again, can't do that all the time. Borderline on delight. But what they don't do much is the kind of broadcasting and conversational channel that you need especially if you're a larger enterprise in this day and age. And don't get me wrong, beyond Salesforce, Oracle TV is beginning to approach it, and Oracle itself is beginning. But right now, neither Microsoft nor SAP are doing anything like that, right? And they both also need to do that. Again, I'm not being formulaic. Adobe especially has a lot at stake because they are the creative economy providers that are tied to enterprise business in ways that no other vendor can. They are incredibly well positioned when it comes to creation and identifying the consumption or the way that customers are consuming, but they're not doing well on distribution, and they need to actually fix that. I would say if they follow those two dictates that I just laid out, that will increase their impact over the next 3 years. And I have to congratulate Adobe on being a winner of the CRM Watchlist 2022. We're now moving to CRM Watchlist 2024. I postponed it because we want to make it. It's the 20th and final production. If you're interested in being part of the CRM Watchlist 2024, 20th and final grand Watchlist, email me at Paul, this is lowercase now, Paul-Greenberg3 at the56group.com and ask for a registration form. Or you can, if you'd like, email us at Playaz Productions Network, and that's Playaz Productions, plural, network at gmail.com. Either one will do. Thank you, and I'm ready to get on to the People's Playbook.
I've been thinking about you, boy. Yeah, yeah. All I think about is you, boy. All I think about, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. All I think about is you, boy. All I think about, yeah, yeah. Remember the time that I had you.
This is the People's Playbook, brought to you by no one. Advertising, nothing. That was dramatic. Okay, so today we're going to talk about gear, audio, video, gear. Look, obviously we're in a hybrid world now, and hybrid means work from home, work from an office, go to live events, go to virtual events, shop online, shop at stores. Whatever it means, one way or the other, it means that we are going to live a much more significant part of our daily life online, especially when it comes to work environments. Now, I am sure that over the last 3 years, almost everybody who's listening to this has been on dozens to hundreds of Zoom calls or Microsoft Team calls or Google, whatever the hell they call it, calls. And they're not really calls, they are video conferences. And several things have happened. One is you had the conference, there were no distractions. Two is you had the conference, the audio froze. Three is the video froze. Four is the whole thing dropped altogether. Five, on the other side of this, you might have seen a wonderful conference with brilliant cinematic kind of approach to the conference, which just enhanced the overall experience of the conference. To wit, Adobe Max's 2022 conference. Take a look at the footage if you can find it, and just watch the visuals and listen to the music and just see how that creates an environment that enhances the overall conference experience, period. Or on a lesser level, look at the production values of Oracle Cloud World this year, and you'll get a good sense of what I'm talking about. Now, the other side of it is you're an executive or you're a person at a company who one way or the other has to communicate with people either at your company or elsewhere via some sort of digital means. And you're at home and you're using your webcam and you're using the you're using the speakers that come with the PC that you bought or the Mac that you bought, and maybe you're using a built-in internal mic for either unit, and let's face it, at best it sounds average, at worst it's terrible sound, it's distracting, there are environmental noises coming in everywhere, and you just really can't get the gist of the meeting or discussion that you're having. Or if you're doing a presentation, even worse, the people listening really can't get much out of your presentation just because it sounds and looks terrible. And look, that's not even unusual pre-COVID. For example, you go back to the earliest days of YouTube. And in YouTube, you saw in the very beginning just a huge amount of uploaded videos that were terrible quality, but the key was, oh my God, that's my video. People are seeing me. That's amazing. Now, I want you to think about your contemporary YouTube experience. You go onto YouTube and you watch a video. Are you going to watch a really terribly produced, low quality, poor resolution, poor sounding video? No, you won't waste your time. You're looking for production values. And that goes back to even further, which is, look, we all grew up. I don't care what generation you're with. If you're boomer, if you're X, if you're Neil, if you're Z, right? You grew up on television. You watch TV. Maybe you watch the digital versions of TV, but one way or the other, one thing that you always just took for granted was the production values that were associated with those TV shows. And all videos and all audio podcasts, for example, you associate with the production values that you saw on TV over the years. And if they don't have that, your expectation says, wait, this does not meet my expectations. It detracts from the overall experience I'm having, and thus detracts from my ability to understand and utilize the content that's being provided to me. So then the question becomes, okay, I am an executive, I do present, and I also attend virtual events, but I also participate as a speaker and a moderator and narrator in virtual events, and I talk at a lot of internal meetings. So you have decisions to make, and what I want to go over here is, number one, if you're willing to go the basically half mile you have to go to begin to set up good audio and video, you have two reasons to think about it. And this is why the five steps in the People's Playbook are about AV. So what's step one? Step one is you have to decide why you're doing this. Meaning, is it going to be strictly for internal meetings? Is it be communicate only with my family? Is it going to be because I occasionally will have to give presentations at conferences? Is it going to be that I am a key participant in conferences as a MC or a narrator or a host of something? What is the reason that I am going to present digitally in some way and communicate with some audience in some capacity? Then you have to make, in step two becomes, what do you want to achieve with the quality of that audio video? One is, do you want to prevent distraction? And what that means is very simple. You want to be in a position where you don't get audio drops and video freezes. You just want it to smooth along so that the content's the focus and the AV is not a distraction. Or do you want the AV to enhance the experience? You have a really nice sound set. You have a very crisp video picture. Your audio sounds terrific. That actually enhances the experience. And actually, there are studies out there, although I'm not going to bother to quote them because this is a playbook, not a scientific research conversation. There are studies out there that say that that good audio and video will enhance the ability to retain the content. But you have to make that decision. Stop distraction or enhance experience. Those are very different budgetary discussions. The third thing you have to do, once you decide on, actually the second thing, because I would call the first thing 1A and B, really. The second thing you have to do is decide on the location for your studio. And when I say that, you say, my house. Well, that's not the location for your studio. That's the place you live. It could be a room. Like, for example, in my house, I have two places that video occur. One is I have a small 8x9x9 studio, dedicated room, full studio. The other place that audio and video are part and parcel of my outreach is in my office. It's where I do work. It's a big office. It's where I'm doing this podcast right now, in fact. And here, I will watch conferences. I will participate in most Zoom meetings. So occasionally I'll do them in the other room. But for example, if I'm doing CRM Playaz, or if I'm moderating a panel for a vendor on a thought leadership topic, or actually the subject of the discussion for that thought leadership topic, there I will do it in the studio. When I'm doing a Zoom meeting, or I'm even doing this podcast right now, or just participating and watching an analyst summit or a digital event, I'm doing it in the office. And the equipment is different in both places. But one way or the other, you decide on a location or locations, and then be prepared to do what you have to do to bring it to the level that you need to bring it, depending on the use case for each of the rooms that you're doing it in. Number three, then, is you have to recognize what kind of equipment you're going to basically need. First, on the good audio side, you would think I just need a mic. And you do need a mic, for sure. But you also need a headset so that you can hear other speakers and at the same time not communicate to your own speakers, which distract enormously when you can hear your own voice due to the fact that, or other people's voice through your home speakers. So you have to think about a headset. The other side is if you're going the level of enhancement rather than just stop distraction, you have to think of potentially the room environment you're in and soundproofing that room. Now, on the video side, you say, okay, just something that shows my face. I have a webcam on my built into my laptop or into my PC. No, if you're going for that, you might want to have a separate webcam depending on the resolution that your webcam provides. If you have a laptop that provides 720p resolution, you know what? You can get away with that. But why not spend an additional, I don't know, $100 to $199, maybe $200 to buy a 1080p webcam or even a 4K webcam? I have recommendations like for the webcam, I always love the Facecam from Elgato, which gives me a fantastic 1080p signal, but it's not one I would use in my studio. The other decision you have to make is, okay, webcam, internal webcam, external webcam, or camera, because you're going to get a much higher quality, but it's also a much more complex process if you're buying a separate camera to actually broadcast or to live stream to or pre-record from. Then you have to think about lighting, which is super important. Poor lighting, it doesn't matter how good your camera is, the lighting is going to be terrible and it's going to be a distraction. So you have to start thinking about the lighting. And again, I'm not going to go into all the recommendations, although I can in a further podcast if you want to. Now, that's number 3. Number 4, then, you have to start thinking about your setup. Okay, the room in my office, for example, if you see it, you'd recognize that right now I have a PC sitting right in front of me. Behind it, I have a light. I have a webcam from the Elgato one facing me. Again, this is a podcast, so you're not seeing the video. I have right now a specific microphone that I've chosen to do podcasts with. I have a different microphone that I just broadcast and communicate with on a Zoom meeting. This microphone I'm using now is a Neumann TLM 102. Pretty pricey, but its sound is really good, right? And it's also designed as a mic to stay away from lots of ambient room. But the other kind of decisions are, okay, if I'm dealing with broadcasting an actual organized show, do I want 1 or 2 camera views or 3 camera views? Do I want 4 camera views? Whatever. In other words, you're making decisions on whether or not, based on your room setup, what kind of lighting you need, what kind of cameras you need, how many cameras. Is this room going to be all virtual, meaning you're going to be the only one who ever is in it broadcasting? Or if it's a show, are you going to have additional room for someone else who might join you physically, sit next to you in the show? And that's a whole different mic setup, for example. Now, I'm probably scaring you quite a bit with all this, but I'm going from simple to complex in the same breath. Believe me, we would have 2 very different discussions if you said simple versus complex and the details. All right. Once you get to the point that you've, 1, understood why you're doing it. Am I going to do a show? Am I doing it just for Zoom internal meetings? Am I doing it to communicate with customers? Am I doing it for being able to moderate a panel or a MC event or narrate or be a guest on a show? Once I've decided my location, this is the room I want to do it in. Separate studio, mixed room. And once I've then done my research on, do I want multiple cameras, single camera? Is it going to be all virtual or is it going to be room for a physical other guest in that room? Is this room going to need soundproofing because it gives lots of room sound, or is it, and what kind of mic does that mean? Things like that. Then you start doing the research. Given everything we just discussed, what mic is going to be best? what camera or webcam, meaning now that might depend on whether you're going to live stream, pre-record, just do Zoom meetings, period, that are never either recorded or live streamed. They're just meetings back and forth, right? Each component, the mic, the camera, the light, the headset, whether or not you need soundproofing, all the different components, and there are plenty of others we could talk to, which is a mixer or a video switcher. That's when we get a little more complex. Then you make the decisions on each individual, and a lot of experts you can go to are very trustworthy over the web that I would highly recommend. My favorite of all when it comes to sound and light is a man named Curtis Judd, who not only is the iconic guy on the internet, and the link will be somewhere in the show notes to him, will be Curtis Judd, who is worshipped pretty much by everybody and is a very nice man. He actually helped me with some consulting he did to help me with when I was doing my setup in my studio across the hall. So those are the 5 steps. Why are you doing it? 1A. You want it to be you want to stop distraction or enhance experience. 1B. What's the location going to be? What's the purpose and the location? That's 2. 3. What components are you going to need? And for what? Audio and what video? That's 3. 4. What kind of setup do you want in that room? Is multi-camera, single camera, all virtual, room with others? 5. Then you start researching the individual components. But you have to make decisions on the other 4 before you start digging into the research. And on the gear show that we'll be coming up with, we'll be getting into the detail. If you like, I am always happy to provide you with my setup, both in this mixed office, this is where I'm doing the podcast, and also in the other room now, which is my studio. Now, finally, there's a decent chance, depending on the complexity, that you're going to need some video editing and some audio editing potentially. I can always provide you with the lists of plenty of tools, both simple and complex, that you can use, or you might even have to hire a video editor. It's all dependent on your budget. It's all dependent on your purpose. It's all dependent on your setup. So with that, I think People's Playbook is pretty much had it. I've had it for the week. I think what we're going to do now is, you know what? Let's leave. That's it for this week's episode of Talking Headless. If you want to catch this and other episodes and our other shows, go to playazproductions.network and you'll see what we're doing. Otherwise, go to Spotify, Apple, Google, and all the usual. I'll see you later.
Talking Headless, a PPN Digital Broadcast.